Hey everybody, Tom here with Hidden Beats, and today we're talking with the ever so talented Ute Lemper. How are you doing?
Hello to Canada. I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm in New York here.
New
Not so
York?
far away.
Is it the weather really snowy there? Or?
Not snowy, no, but freezing cold. Suddenly it turned freezing cold, and yep, it's definitely winter, but not as winterly as it is usually up there.
Yeah, I
In,
had to shovel 3.5 feet of snow on the weekend. So just from my front door, I couldn't even get out of the house.
wow. Well, I mean, but you guys are used to it, so
Yeah, I mean I wear shorts sometimes in the winter, so I'm really used to it.
so does my son. He just
Yeah.
doesn't wear long pants. He's always warm.
Well, we're here today to talk about you and your career in music, but for those who are new, can you give a little introduction about yourself?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm definitely a time traveler, which is actually the title of my new album CD and also the title of my autobiography that I wrote this year. I turned just 60 years old. And yes, I'm looking back to more than 40 years of life on stages of the world in music, theater, film, and everything. I probably would say that I started my breakthrough about in 1986 when still the Cold War, when I was in Berlin, West Berlin, thank God, not in the East. And I launched this whole re-recording a series with a Universal Decca music of the music of the Weimar Republic, the music that was suppressed by the Nazis, and the music that was the first time being re-recorded now, this incredible repertoire of Weill, Brecht, Hollander, the Berlin Cabaret of this progressive republic, Weimar pre-World War II, before the Nazis destroyed everything. And this repertoire really presents something so progressive that people were like astonished how basically 50 years were sucked away in time, you know, with world wars and all this terrible Cold War. But the world seemed to be at a breaking point in the 20s, especially in Europe, where you know, time progress would have happened so much faster. I said if the Nazis wouldn't have destroyed the Weimar Republic in 1933, the 60s would have happened in the 40s and right there in Berlin.
Hmm.
So I was the protagonist of this whole recording series, which was very important worldwide. And then I did a lot of theater, musicals, theater, straight theater, Broadway with Chicago and London, the West End. And since the year 2000, I basically write my own music and did lots and lots of projects and albums surrounding poetry and my own lyrics. And yes, and I sing a lot of different repertoires, and I'm a time traveler through the decades of crazy change in the world between Berlin, Paris, London, and New York. But I'm also just a human being searching for peace and love.
Mm. What drew you to the cabaret, to the Broadway style of music?
Well, the cabaret is different, at least in the European tradition. The cabaret is a political satire. It's very wicked. It always stood for freedom of expression. You know, originally, when 100 years ago, now we're in 2024, in 1924, these cabaret writers were talking about the gender question, about female emancipation from all, you know, asking for equal rights. Everything that is basically contemporary was already addressed 100 years ago in this kind of first democracy of Weimar. And, you know, looking at corruption, at fascism, at right-wing movements, and striving for really for a society that is just and humane to everyone. But now Broadway is a whole different ticket. That here we go for like entertainment, you know, beautiful music and text writers telling stories and in song and dance. I mean, that is a different vehicle, and I loved to do that. I was trained as a ballet dancer in the beginning, then later on as a singer, but then theater in addition to it. So I was kind of very happy also to be inside the musical world. But sometimes and the older I got, I felt really satisfied and fulfilled to tell my own stories in music. And this reflects basically, everything I've ever done, but it is a lot more poetic and personal when it gets to my own songwriting. I've lived through an quite interesting changes. Like, let's look at the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989. And right there, I was in Berlin performing, first time as a Western performer in the East. I was in the Wall concert, Roger Waters on the Potsdamer Platz. That was the first one he launched after separation of Pink Floyd, I remember. And yes, I mean, there were so many different places, like September 11 here in New York, where I wrote songs about and tried to like give an insight of my understanding of how to persevere in these times of craziness.
How do you think the evolution of music and everything has influenced your growth?
Well, the evolution of music is interesting because it obviously keeps changing. And what my children are listening to is only in part really liked by me, by myself. I mean, I am a child of the R&B time, the great Stevie Wonder and Earth, Wind and Fire and Joni Mitchell. This was my world. And and then again, I had the theater world and the musical theater world from Cole Porter to Stephen Sondheim and George Gershwin. That was a different kind of world, obviously, that I lived in. But my personal taste is definitely, as reflected on my last album, Time Traveler, also very kind of a bluesy, jazzy, deep and beautiful song lyrics, poetic, philosophical, and all of it reflective and really giving like a nice listening experience to the audience. Well, stuff nowadays sounds very different. It's not always very human. It's all very programmed and perfectionized. Sometimes the human element comes short. And it's more like a furniture. It's more like a feel-good furniture that is designed to be modernistic, fitting the time, but also to be not intrusive and just, coming along, taking a walk with you, or, making you angry or waking you up or so. But music has evolved in many, many different ways. And some of it is a little bit painful, I find, when it gets to the point that everything is just in a machine, made by a machine, sounding like a machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very commercialized and produced. It's not as free flowing and just kind of emotional as you'd like.
Yes, it's hard to, and the more you put that into people's ears, the more the new generations only know that.
Mm-hmm.
And they listen to like a Joni Mitchell or a Joan Armatrading or even a Sarah Vaughan or but even like an Annie Lennox, and they think, oh, what is that? Why does she sing like this? And because it's so pure and imperfect, but so soulful,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like you unteach the new generations to look and to acknowledge music from the deepest point of your soul. And that is where music is. It was an expression of pain, of suffering, of hope, of love, right? It was not a perfectly designed architecture to look pleasant and sound pleasant.
I think that's actually probably seen the most in like the hip hop community right now, because all the new music coming out there, they're forgetting the past. Like you said, they're forgetting kind of how that music was made and built and how everything progressed that way. I see that a lot more in the hip hop culture myself.
Yes, certainly it is because it's that hip hop culture is more like an attitude. It's all like, they use this platform of this produced music to pull out a message and with a certain attitude, which comes from a little bit of rage and fueled by history and you know, speaking out for justice and so, but sometimes there is not much talent actually in the creation of these songs. That is my old computer. I'm shutting it down quickly. And yes, well, that's you can talk about this for a long time, and I don't want to judge because that's not my place to judge. But sometimes it just makes me very hollow, and doesn't feed me, fulfill me with love and life, like as music is supposed to do.
For sure. Now, I was looking back at some of your previous works, and Punishing Kiss was considered one of your most iconic albums from everything that I was able to read. I'm curious what your inspiration behind that was and how you blended the genres when you were coming up with that album.
Well, this was the year 2000, and until then, I only had recorded historical music. That means the entire catalog of Weimar, which were like 11 first LPs, then CDs, some musical works, of course, live Broadway shows and West End. But then this was the first album that I broke into a contemporary world of music and repertoire. Songs written for me by the Divine Comedy, Nick Cave, Elvis Costello, Tom Waits, Scott Walker. I thought it was a very interesting experiment. And I liked it to actually have a more contemporary vibe and demeanor and a feeling with these songs and arrangements. I then, though, was unsatisfied because I said, well, if I do this, then let me at least write my own stuff. And that's actually the reason that I started to write music exactly in that year 2000 after this album, that I said, you know, I don't need to sing songs written for me. I want to write myself. I play the piano. I have a lot to say, and I love to write poetry. So, if you put a poem together with a cause and a feeling, and you create some beautiful harmonic context on the piano, you have a song, and you can produce it the way you want. And that's I've done that a lot since the year 2000. I put music to the words of Charles Bukowski, Pablo Neruda, and Paulo Coelho, and I wrote two of my own albums. The last one, Time Traveler, is probably the one I like the most because it's the most relaxed. And I took myself the liberty. I produced it myself to actually really take time with this album. I mean, just with laying out the songs and letting the word shine inside a cool, jazzy, harmonic context.
Mm-hmm. Now you pay a lot of tribute to some of the past greats, like we have Marlene Dietrich and Edith Platt. How do you put yourself into that and pay tribute in your own way in your music?
Well, I had a telephone call with Marlene Dietrich in the year 1987 in Paris. I was 24 years old. I was the Sally Bowles in the Parisian production of Cabaret in the Théâtre Mogador. It was a big success, and the newspapers were writing suddenly, oh, la nouvelle Marlene, the new Marlene, just because it was German. And Marlene was alive and well. She was 87 years old. She lived in her apartment, Avenue Montaigne in Paris. And she had heard about me from the newspapers, from the radio, from television, but she hadn't left the house for more than a decade because she didn't want to show her aged face. Mm-hmm. So I wrote her a letter, and I kind of apologized for the comparisons and said, so sorry to be compared to you because I don't deserve that. You are a legend. What you have done in this world was outstanding. And music and theater in mostly Hollywood movies, and also as a chanteuse, as a singer. And yes, well, she received the letter and she called me, and we had a 3-hour telephone call, which was most important. And now 30 years later, I made out of this telephone call a theatrical piece called Rendezvous with Marlene. And I really hope to bring it to Canada. It's a very important piece. I'm transforming, telling the story of the young Ute, the young myself, more than 30 years ago, meeting on the telephone the old Marlene. And then I'm now the old Ute channeling the old Marlene, talking to myself as a young Ute. And we're talking about everything, about the world, about politics. It was a very big story that she was treated as a traitor of the fatherland Vaterlandsverräterin by the Germans because she was a German expatriate who had fought in World War II for the Americans against Nazi Germany. Very honorable, but the Germans never could accept this and forgave her, forgiving. What for being a hero. So until she died in 1992, she was not able to go back to her homeland. And she was very happy to reach out to me to speak German with me at the time and just give me a feeling of her melancholy and her sadness of having lost her basically home culture. She loved the German culture, and she missed it very much. And she was talking about, Hollywood and music, Burt Bacharach, Billy Wilder. Oh my God, everything. She knew everyone, everything. And she had a million lovers, men and women. She was a woman ahead of her time, a woman of the future, way, way ahead of her time. So progressive. And that's a big story. And I really would love to come to Canada and perform my rendezvous with Marlene to the Canadians.
I think that'd be great. And you can just see on your face, just as we're talking, just the happiness you had during that whole conversation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was listening and I was young. It was a big meal for me as a young person, but now being older, I get it. I get it. And yeah, I'll show a little bit. I'm coming to Toronto, Montreal now at the end of the month. 20, when is it?
26th in Toronto is what I have down.
26 Toronto, 28 in Montreal. And I'm so glad to bring a little bit part of that story, but also the Weimar repertoire, which is really important. And the French repertoire. I mean, living many, many years in Paris in my life, of course, I have dove into the beautiful poetry and music of Léo Ferré and Edith Piaf and Jacques Brel and Boris Vian and Serge Gainsbourg and all these wonderful writers. So that is a part of me and my soul. So definitely, I don't know, the Canadians love the French repertoire, so I'm glad to perform a little bit there with the orchestra. And to be finally back. I mean, it's been a long time, and then the pandemic came. It sucked out of us 3 years, basically, right? And here we are, 3 years later.
So
finally.
How do you go about putting that performance in Toronto together? Is it very specific? Did you have a hard time picking things out?
Well, I was asked to perform with a beautiful orchestra, and I said, "Yeah, no, I'm so ready to come back to Canada." And we decided to make like a retrospective, a little bit of like this long journey to really give the essence of what I've done and what I have represented and enjoyed the most, which is, of course, the Weimar repertoire, Kurt Weill, Bertolt Brecht, Holländer, the Berlin Cabaret, and then we go to the French repertoire. Then we do some musicals. I was in Cabaret, I was in Chicago, I was in the Blue Angel, and I do Peter Pan and Cats and all of that, but I do just a little bit, just my favorite ones, and then I do some. What I love a lot is some repertoire of Astor Piazzolla, the Argentinian tango composer, who I did like lots and lots of interpretations of his beautiful songs with the original musicians from Buenos Aires. I have a few orchestra arrangements. I'm always really loving it, singing that stuff. And we continue with some really cool songs that mean a lot nowadays. For example, the song by Bob Dylan, The Answer, My Friend is Blowing in the Wind. It was written in the 60s as a response to the Vietnam War, but looking at our world nowadays in disarray and complete chaos, and again, on top of on the brink of like exploding into all different options of crisis. I find that song so contemporary. There's another beautiful song I love to sing. Marlene Dietrich sang it. It's called Where Have All the Flowers Gone? About the circle of history, written by Pete Seeger, and I love it. And it's really about the fact that history always wanted to be a good teacher, but it just couldn't find any students.
No, that's a very deep one too. I've heard that song in the past, and I understand that for sure, and it rings true today for sure.
It does, yeah.
Now, with the music scene in general, how do you think that social media and everything has helped kind of push things forward? You've had a long career. You've experienced a lot of different aspects of music and the industry. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, Yeah, it's I'm very conflicted about it. I myself have Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts. Facebook now, the new generation think Facebook, what the hell is that? It's so old fashioned. No, my kids don't do Facebook anymore. But the TikTok thing, I just can't get used to this at all. But I'm so saddened to see my little boy, he's 14 and he just gets sucked into that world and watches one video after the next and said, you have a life, get off that telephone and just enjoy your life without all of this.
Hmm.
Um, well, on the other end, it's a wonderful way of communication. The children are, and the growing up nations and generations are always together. They can communicate at any time. My God, did I dream about in the 70s to be able to have a phone call and to see that person when you would speak to them and and now you can be not only with one person, you have like a whole chat room and everyone's there and talking. It's a great way actually to escape those who are afraid of loneliness and or being alone, but it is a seductive device that makes people addicted, and it's the misuse and the manipulation. I mean, it's horrendous, and it's really. I'm just worried about the future. Look, I mean, what happened over the last 20 years is so outrageous and so over the top, the digital revolution. And what will this be in 2050? And
Hmm.
I'm really worried that these young generations will just live through their digital avatars and not their own lives.
Yeah, it makes me a little concerned too. I have a 1-year-old now, and I'm just kind of picturing how that's going to go down in the future. I'm just about 40, so I was able to play outside, but I also came into the digital world a bit, so I understand both sides. But now, looking at the future and how things are going, I don't want my daughter to have a cell phone ever. Like, I don't want any of that stuff right now.
Good luck with that, because if you don't let her have it, she wants it even more. So there is a good middle ground that one has to find, and limiting time. And it is also an educational device, I have to say. When my kids go on, they have anything they're interested in. Is it cats, or is it huskies, or is it basketball, or some kind of Rubik's cube, or whatever? They immediately can research a huge amount about this, get the tutorials, and learn things. And they're so independent and quick with this, which is quite. I had to get my daughter to get the Zoom link working, but it's also a incredible access to education that you have. But if you use it as this, then use it for the good. Don't use it for killing more people in Fortnite.
Mhm. No, for sure.
Hunting down.
And that's the thing. My daughter already wants the cell phone now because she likes to look at herself on the camera. So she picks it up and has the camera on, likes to see herself because she can go back and forth and do fun things.
He might be a movie maker one day, who knows? Well, I think it's interesting to explore it, because there's no way that you can keep that away from them. They grow up like this already in elementary school. They
Mm,
are, everything's presented through this platform. So, but it needs to be controlled, and
for sure.
controlled from the top too, because they know what we're clicking on YouTube or whatever. They see it, whatever this intelligence is, that, and they feed you more of this, and that's it. Suddenly, yeah, you click one thing on Prince Harry, and suddenly the whole load of Prince Harry things, royalist stuff, anti-royalist stuff, comes up, and it's politicized so quickly. And like, what am I doing with these people? And you're in some kind of chat room with people who are this and this extremists. It's very dangerous.
I mean, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot more of the cabaret stuff from researching you a little bit. I'm going to get a lot more stuff
Oh
coming to
my
me.
God. Shall I be sorry for that?
No, actually, I this is actually really interesting to me because it's stories that I would never have heard anywhere else. So it's fun to be able to talk to you and learn a little bit more like that.
Yeah, I was happy to be actually the protagonist for this whole revival of the Weimar material, because nowadays this stuff is out there, and people, young artists, are singing it. They're using it as a tool, as a tool as a platform to bring out their own struggles. Whether it's like burlesque, it's like out of the box. It's strange. It's anti-establishment. It's questioning just a lot of tradition, rules, and stuff, and certainly gender and all of this. And it's a really a very interesting um, um, Sprachrohr, as we say in German. It's like a great way to to exercise freedom of speech in theater and music, you know, and it's uncensored. Some of it is provocative.
I mean, that's art. That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about, exactly.
So I have a couple fun questions I always like to ask when I'm doing an interview because it picks your brain a little bit and gets some more things out of you. And the first one I have, I think you'll probably have a really unique thought on this, is what is one thing that you think should be asked more in an interview that's not enough?
Uh, in what way has life and the choices you made in your life and the world you created for yourself, you live in, has that um, has that specified the identity that you have today as an artist? Because I think I am really it's a constant evolution that I lived through as an artist too, you know, that is affected by so many elements, like being a mother of 4 children, having them in Europe, having them in America, living in between the 2 continents, living through these great breaks and changes in time and history, and seeing, reflecting myself also in a mirror with these younger generations that I live with in my household. My oldest son is 29. He doesn't live with me, but I still am with him in touch a lot. And how has that affected me? And certainly all the challenges that you face as a woman in a relationship with your partner, through marriages, in the society, in the work atmosphere, these little emancipations that you live and create for yourself on an almost daily basis are very interesting. And they search and long and look forward to that place of complete freedom and peace inside, stillness inside. Because when you're an artist, you live under a lot of pressure all the time. And very young, I lived under a lot of pressure because my career like catapulted when I was only like 23 years old. So it's like many, many years, like decades later, and I still have to emancipate myself from this pressure that I sometimes feel. And then because you always like chase yourself, you chase your own tail, you chase this job or whatever, you know, you chase success, but you learn, you know, only later you learn that with everything, especially with the little adventures you did that were not successful or rather marginal, barely recognized sometimes, you really define yourself the most, because you adventure and your curiosity brings you into like really dreams and into realities that where you push the borders and the boundaries. And only if you keep pushing your own boundaries, if you explore more and you let your curiosity take open strive, then you can find out, you know, how far you can go. And it was always very important for me never to be normal, never to fit in. As a small child, I already felt I couldn't fit in. And as a teenager, it was very clear, I was very rebellious. But then even as an adult, I never wanted to be really, I couldn't define myself ever. And, you know, you get stereotyped a lot by, you know, chanteuse and diva and blah, blah, blah. But I'm none of it and everything and a lot more. And you always, only if you're not ever try to be normal, you can find out what is extraordinary and different about you, and that is a continuous process. So I like to look at all of this from this perspective. And in my book, my autobiography, which is actually called Die Zeitreisende, the time traveler, and it's out in German, Italian. I'm searching still for an English license at the moment. I really, really hope it comes out very quickly in English, because my international audience is waiting for it. I have a lot of reflections about time and a definition and identity, emancipation of taking this ride to find this fulfillment, so you can embrace age. When I turned 50, my father said, "Oh, now you start the youth of age." And I still think this with a 60, by the way. But it's interesting that you acknowledge the body gets really definitely older. You feel it everywhere and you see it. But the mind, the spirit, is something that is a wonderful, exciting world that gets richer and richer with time. It becomes so peaceful in itself at one point that it can very well live with the physical decay. And I think that's the purpose and the intelligence of nature. And that's a gift, obviously. So these are nice things to talk about and to tell people who are listening to the interview.
For sure. And I really like, I'm sitting here just listening. I'm excited just to listen to what you have to say. Now,
Thank you.
I'm curious what you hope that fans take away from your music or your performances in general.
Yeah. Well, I think my new album, Time Travel, is definitely something that you can just listen to, you stream it or whatever, however you have it, and you just let it roll. It's a very warm, smooth, jazzy, thoughtful album, all written by myself. The stage performances are a little different. They're more transcendent. I invite people into a very powerful theatrical room where I tell stories, big stories, small little stories, and it's very important to be able to connect and find this open heart in these people, and to tell them the stories and touch them with it. Some of the stories are sad, some of them are happy or entertaining, funny, and it's also his ride through history. It's a really interesting historical journey. So I hope they take a lot away with it, because they will get touched, they will learn, they will enjoy, and they're able to get a piece of my humanity and my as a musician too. Yeah.
Well, that's all the notes I have written down, and there's definitely a lot. And like I said, I've just been sitting here listening and taking in all your stories. They're great. And if we had more time, I'm sure we could be talking about a million more things.
Thank you. Yes, yeah.
So is there any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave to people before we sign off?
Well, I am yes, I'm just back from Switzerland, and I sang a similar repertoire actually there in the Swiss Alps, and it's so interesting that now I go to Canada, a world far away from that, and I'm here in the middle, and it's so wonderful. I'm so privileged that I was able for so many decades to bring my stories to an international audience, and who has stayed faithful for so long and grows old with me, and always seeing young generations coming to the concerts. It's a wonderful thing too. Yes, I would say, please stay with me, and yes, I see you in concert, or listen to the album, read the book. It's on Amazon, and yeah, I want to be able, as long as I can, to enjoy this privilege to be on stage and share magical spheres, the magical roams with the audience. And if you can share that kind of magical roam, I feel one is never alone. You always have people who want to be there too, in this place where you can touch a little deeper than on a day-to-day base, and you touch pieces of poetry, literature, stories, history, a human the human experience.
Yeah, and if I get a chance, I plan on coming to one of the shows. I'm in Ottawa, so I'm a couple hours away from either show. So if I
Okay.
get a chance, I'll be there, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how it goes. we're gonna make sure we link everything, socials, tits, all that stuff, so people can
Thank
make
you
sure.
very much. Yes, yeah. I'll snow shovel for you then.
I mean, if you want to come, yeah. Well, I won't keep you any longer. We've had a little bit of a kerfuffle getting started at first, but it was definitely great to meet you and talk to you and hear just kind of what you've been through in your career.
Yes, thank you. And yes, but snow shovel, I have to be careful because from my Broadway years here, when I was in Chicago for 2.5 years on Broadway, Vegas, and London, I still have my accumulative